I went outside to make a call, and that's when I heard my mom's voice say, "She's a purse for us," followed by my aunt laughing. That one line shattered everything I thought I knew about family. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lana Pierce. I'm 25, and for the last 4 years, I've been working 2 jobs to take care of my mom, Diane, and my Aunt Ruth. My dad passed away suddenly, and ever since then, I've done everything I could to help. I paid the rent, bought groceries, covered the bills, and even stopped saving for grad school. I thought I was doing the right thing, helping the only family I had left. That day, I stepped outside to answer a work call. When I came back toward the kitchen, I heard my mom say those awful words. My aunt laughed and replied, "As long as she feels guilty, she'll keep paying." I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those nights I came home exhausted. All those times they told me how proud they were. It was all fake. I quietly backed away and sat in my car shaking. That night I barely slept. My heart hurt more than I can explain. I remembered every moment they made me feel guilty for not doing enough. Every time they said, "Your dad would want you to help." Now I realized they had been using his memory to control me. The next morning, they acted like nothing happened. My mom asked for money for groceries, and Ruth talked about a little loan she needed. I looked at them and felt sick. When I hesitated, my mom frowned and said, "Don't be selfish, Lana." That was the moment I decided I was done being their wallet. I started planning quietly. I opened a new bank account, moved my savings, and found a tiny studio apartment through my best friend, Mark. I told my mom I was working late, so I could pack my thing. A week later, I left without saying goodbye. When rent day came and they didn't get money, my mom called furious. I told her I wouldn't be paying for them anymore. She screamed, "You owe us everything." I took a deep breath and played the short recording of what I'd heard that day. There was silence. Then she hung up. They tried to guilt me for months, showing up at my job, leaving sad messages, but I ignored them. I focused on myself for the first time. I paid off my debts, finished my classes, and finally applied for grad school. A year later, I graduated and got my dream job. Mara raised a toast and said, "To Lana, who finally realized she's not a purse, she's priceless." I smiled through tears. If someone treats your kindness like a wallet, remember, you can always close it. I stepped outside to take a quick work call, thinking it would just be another ordinary evening. The air was cool, and I remember feeling tired but proud that I was holding everything together. When I hung up and started walking back toward the house, I heard laughter coming from the kitchen window. My mom's voice came first, sharp and full of something I didn't recognize. "She's basically our purse now," she said, followed by my aunt's loud laugh. Then my mom added, "As long as she keeps feeling guilty about her dad, we're set." The words hit me like a punch. I froze in place, unable to move. My hands started shaking, and I felt my throat tighten. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard them. But then Ruth said, "You're right. She'll never stop helping us. She's too soft." Their voices sounded so calm, so sure, as if I wasn't even a person to them, just a tool they could use whenever they needed money. I stood there, hidden behind the side of the house, trying to breathe quietly so they wouldn't hear me. Every part of me wanted to run inside and scream, but something stopped me. I slowly pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed record. I didn't even know why. Maybe I wanted proof that this nightmare was real, that I wasn't imagining what I'd just heard. Their conversation went on, full of laughter and small comments that made my stomach twist. Ruth joked about how I'd probably work myself into the ground, just to keep them happy. My mom said, "Well, that's what happens when you raise a kid who thinks love means sacrifice." They both laughed again. I felt my heart breaking in slow motion. The people I loved most were using me like an ATM. My dad's memory, the reason I'd tried so hard to help them, had become a weapon they used to keep me under control. I wanted to cry, but no tears came, just this heavy, cold feeling in my chest. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. My phone was still recording, the small red light glowing faintly. I stopped it after a few seconds, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand to hear another word. I sat down on the back steps, staring at nothing, the phone still in my hand. In that moment, everything changed. The laughter coming from inside the house felt cruel, distant, almost unreal. I thought about every dollar I'd spent, every time I'd told myself it was worth it, because family meant everything. But now, family sounded like a lie. I stayed outside until the laughter faded and the lights in the kitchen went dark. I knew that nothing would ever feel the same again. Something inside me broke that night, and no apology would ever be enough to fix it. That night I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling while the echo of their laughter played over and over in my head. The house felt smaller, colder, like every wall carried a memory of me trying too hard. I started thinking about everything I'd done since my dad was gone. The nights I came home late from double shifts, my feet swollen and my eyes burning. The weekends I stayed in while my friends went out, just to make sure the rent was paid. Every small sacrifice I made suddenly looked foolish under the harsh light of truth. I remembered the times my mom smiled and said, "You're such a good daughter." I used to feel proud when she said that, like I was doing something meaningful. Now those words tasted bitter. They weren't thank yous, they were tricks. I could see it so clearly now. Each compliment was a rope to pull me closer, each guilt trip a chain to keep me tied down. I had believed her tears when she talked about struggling. I had believed Ruth when she said I was the only one keeping this family together. But it had all been part of the game. I sat on my bed and tried to count the things I'd given up. There were the trips I never took, the clothes I didn't buy, the classes I dropped because the bills came first. My friends had moved forward, building lives, while I stayed stuck in the same place, too scared to let my family fall. I thought I was doing the right thing, but all I'd done was make it easy for them to use me. As the hours passed, anger and sadness mixed until I couldn't tell which one hurt more. I thought about my dad and how proud I wanted him to be. Would he have wanted this for me? Would he have wanted me to carry the weight of people who only saw me as a source of money? The answer came quietly but clearly no. He would have wanted me to live. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying everything. Every fake smile, every moment they made me feel guilty for not doing it. My chest ached from holding back tears, but when they finally came, they wouldn't stop. I cried until the sky outside turned pale gray. When the sun finally rose, I sat by the window and looked out at the empty street. Something inside me felt hollow, like I'd lost not just my family, but a part of myself. The person who believed that love meant giving everything was gone. In her place was someone broken, someone who finally saw the truth. I wiped my face, but the pain stayed. That morning, I realized I wasn't just tired from work. I was tired from being lied to. Morning light spilled through the curtains, but it felt dull, almost gray. I sat at the table, trying to sip the coffee I'd made, the bitterness matching the heaviness in my chest. Diane walked in humming, her tone cheerful, like nothing ugly had been said the night before. Ruth followed, holding her phone, scrolling as if the world owed her something. They didn't look at me when they started talking. "We need to get groceries today," my mom said, her voice flat and practiced. "The fridge is almost empty." Ruth nodded, adding, "And I saw the electric bill on the counter. We should take care of that too." I stared at them, both sitting there so casually, expecting me to reach for my wallet like I always did. Their faces looked different now, same features, same smiles, but no warmth behind them. All I could see were two people who thought they owned my kindness. I didn't move. My fingers gripped the mug tighter as I tried to stay calm. When I didn't answer right away, Ruth gave me that pitying look she always used when she wanted to make me feel small. "You know, honey," she said softly, "your mom has been through so much since your dad passed. You can't turn your back on her now." Then my mom spoke, almost whispering, "Your dad would want you to take care of us, sweetheart." Those words hit like a knife. I'd heard them 100 times before, but now they sounded poisonous. My dad's memory had become their favorite tool. They used his name to keep me in line, to make me believe that giving up my own life was somehow noble. For years it worked, but not anymore. Something inside me snapped. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even argue. I just looked at them and saw the truth in its full, ugly shape. These women weren't helpless. They were comfortable living off my effort, comfortable watching me burn myself out. I stood up and walked to my room, leaving my half-empty mug on the table. Behind me, my mom asked, "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I shut the door quietly and leaned against it, heart pounding. My mind started spinning, not with anger, but with plans. I opened my closet and looked at the small suitcase tucked in the corner. For the first time, I thought about what it would feel like to leave, to breathe air that wasn't filled with guilt. I imagined waking up in a place where no one demanded anything. That morning was the end of something I'd been holding together for too long. I knew I couldn't fix what was broken between us. I didn't tell them, but I had made my choice. They would never see it coming, but I was done being their purse. I started acting normal around them, pretending everything was fine. I smiled when they spoke, nodded when they complained, but inside I was already gone. Every word out of my mouth was carefully chosen, every movement deliberate. They didn't notice the distance. They never did. To them, I was still the dependable daughter, the one who'd never say no. That made it easier to slip away unnoticed. The first thing I did was go to the bank during my lunch break. My hands trembled as I filled out the paperwork for a new account under just my name. When the teller handed me the card, it felt like freedom in a piece of plastic. I transferred what little I had managed to save, the money they didn't know about, into it. Watching the confirmation screen made my heart race. It was the first step toward being untangled from. After that, I began searching for a place to live. I couldn't afford much, but anything would be better than that house. I wanted walls that didn't carry their voices. I called my best friend, Mara, someone I could actually trust. She listened quietly, not judging, just understanding. By the next day, she'd found a small studio near my job, tiny, old, but clean. Rent was cheap, and I could manage it alone. Every evening, I told them I was staying late at work. I'd come home past midnight, pretending to be exhausted from long shifts. In reality, I was packing small things into a duffel bag, little by little, so they wouldn't notice anything missing. One night, I folded my clothes silently, pausing whenever the floor creaked, my heart beating too fast. I slid photo albums, a few books, and my dad's watch into the bag. I couldn't take much, but I took what mattered. Mara offered to keep some boxes at her place until I moved completely. We loaded them into her car under the cover of night, laughing nervously like kids sneaking out after curfew. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of excitement, fear mixed with hope. At home, Diane and Ruth never suspected a thing. They still asked for small favors, still dropped hints about money, still acted like I'd never changed. I gave short answers and smiled faintly, letting them believe everything was the same. The truth was, I'd already left them in my mind. Each night, I'd lie awake in my half-empty room, planning the moment I'd walk away. I pictured locking the door one last time, leaving the keys on the counter, and never turning back. It wasn't anger that drove me anymore. It was peace, the kind I'd never known before. I didn't owe them an explanation or a goodbye. The life they drained from me was finally mine to reclaim. The first weekend after I moved out, the world felt quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. My phone stayed silent for a few days, which gave me a strange sense of calm. But on the first of the month, the peace ended. My screen lit up with my mother's name. I stared at it for a while before answering. Her voice came through sharp and irritated, skipping any greeting. "Did you forget what day it is?" she asked. I could picture her sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed, expecting the same thing she always got. "I didn't forget," I said softly. "Then why hasn't the money come through?" she demanded. "The rent's due. You know how this works, Lana." I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not sending it this time." There was a pause, then a short laugh that didn't sound amused. "What are you talking about? You can't just decide that. We depend on you." "I know," I replied, "but that's over. You'll have to handle things yourselves now." Her tone changed instantly, turning from confusion to fury. "You owe us everything. After all we've done for you. After all the sacrifices." I felt something inside me finally give way. I had spent years swallowing my anger, trying to keep peace, but now the truth needed to be spoken, even if it hurt. "You mean after all I've done for you?" I said quietly. "You've treated me like a wallet, not a daughter." Her voice rose, shouting words I didn't even process. I let her talk, her anger spilling through the line, and then I stopped her. "Do you remember what you said in the kitchen that day?" I asked. She went silent for a second. "What are you talking about?" I unlocked my phone, opened the recording, and pressed play. The familiar sound of their laughter filled the quiet between us. Her own voice followed, cold, casual. "She's basically our purse now." The silence that came after was heavy. I could hear her breathing, sharp and uneven. No excuses, no denial, just quiet. Then a click. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the black screen. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was something else, release maybe. The weight that had lived in my chest for years started to lift. The rest of the day passed in a haze. She didn't call back. Neither did Ruth. I expected rage or guilt or even a text, but there was nothing. It was like a door had closed, finally and completely. For the first time, their silence didn't scare me. It felt like freedom, raw and unfamiliar, but real. I knew there was no going back after that call, and I didn't want to. The days after that phone call felt strange. At first, there was silence, but it didn't last long. Within a week, the messages started. Long voicemails filled with sobs, dramatic pauses, and accusations. My mother's voice trembled as she said things like, "I can't believe you'd do this to your own blood," and, "You've changed, Lon. Money has made you cold." Ruth added her own calls too, pretending to be the peacemaker, saying, "Your mom's heart is breaking. Just come home and talk." I didn't respond to either of them. I deleted every message as soon as I heard their voices. Then they started showing up at my job. The first time, I saw them standing near the front entrance, both dressed like they were attending church, faces pale but determined. I was helping a customer when I caught sight of them through the glass door. My stomach dropped. I excused myself, went straight to the back room, and stayed there until my shift ended. After that, I asked the manager to tell security not to let them in again. They came twice more before finally giving up. When showing up didn't work, they turned to gossip. In our small town, news traveled fast. Soon, people whispered that I'd run off after meeting some rich guy, that I'd abandoned my poor mother, that I was ungrateful. Every rumor had a different flavor, but they all painted me as the villain. A few old neighbors even called, asking what had happened, trying to pry details out of me. I told them nothing. I learned quickly that silence had more power than defending myself ever could. As the noise around me grew louder, I focused on the quiet things, my work, my apartment, my future. I took extra shifts, not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to build something of my own. For the first time, the money I earned stayed in my hands. I paid off the last bit of debt I'd carried for years and felt a kind of relief I didn't know existed. Nights became peaceful again. I cooked simple meals, read before bed, and didn't have to walk on eggshells. The guilt that had ruled me for so long started to fade, replaced by something steadier, self-respect. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a tired caretaker. I saw a woman learning to live. Eventually, I filled out the grad school application I had once given up on. Every answer I typed felt like a promise to myself that I wouldn't go back to the life I'd escaped. Submitting it felt like closing a final door. The calls stopped after a while. The whispers faded too. What remained was peace, quiet, and the sound of my own choices guiding me forward. For the first time in years, that was enough. Several months passed before their names reached me again. Life had begun to settle into something calm and steady. My routine was simple: work, study, and nights spent in my small apartment that finally felt like home. One afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. I opened it carefully, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a short note from an old neighbor, written in shaky handwriting. She mentioned that my mother and aunt had lost the house. The landlord had evicted them after months of unpaid rent. I read the words twice. My heart caught somewhere between relief and sadness. The image of them standing in front of that house, boxes at their feet, came to my mind. For years, I had imagined being free from them, yet hearing that they'd fallen so low stirred something deep inside me. It wasn't love, not anymore, but a faint echo of what used to be. A small part of me still wished things had been different. For a long time, I sat by the window, the letter open on the table. I thought about everything they'd done, the lies, the manipulation, the way they'd used my guilt like a leash. And yet, there was no satisfaction in knowing they had finally faced the consequences. What I felt wasn't triumph, it was distance. The kind that comes when something inside finally breaks clean. A few days later, while passing a local shelter on my way home, I noticed a list posted near the door. It mentioned the names of recent visitors who came seeking food and temporary beds. My eyes caught two familiar ones, Diane and Ruth. The world seemed to pause for a moment. I stood there quietly, feeling the weight of old memories press against my chest. That night, I filled 2 large grocery bags with canned food, bread, and a few essentials. I took them to the shelter just before closing, asking the volunteer to give them to anyone who needed them. I didn't mention names, but I knew they would find their way to the right people. I left without waiting for thanks. Walking back to my car, the air felt cool against my skin. There was no anger left, no urge to punish or to forgive. It wasn't pity that made me do it either. It was something simpler, an ending. I had given them enough of my life already. This small act wasn't a gift for them, it was a release for me. As I drove home, I felt lighter. They would never know where that food came from, and I didn't need them to. My kindness no longer had a price attached to it. It was mine to give on my terms. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in a long time, knowing that I had closed the last open door between us. A full year passed, and the life I was living no longer resembled the one I had escaped. The days moved differently now, slower, steadier, full of purpose instead of obligation. My mornings started with sunlight spilling across my desk, textbooks open beside a cup of coffee that no one asked me to share. The exhaustion that used to cling to me had faded, replaced by something I'd almost forgotten. When graduation day came, I stood among my classmates, cap balanced awkwardly on my head, heart beating fast. My name echoed through the hall, and for the first time in years, I felt proud of myself, not because I had carried others, but because I had carried me. The applause sounded distant, but the feeling inside was sharp and real. I had done this alone, no guilt, no debt, no strings attached. After the ceremony, Mara wrapped me in a hug that nearly lifted me off the ground. She'd been my anchor through every dark stretch, reminding me what friendship looked like when it wasn't about taking. Through her, I had met others who shared that same quiet strength, people who didn't measure my worth by what I could give, but by who I was. We met for dinners, late-night study sessions, and laughter that didn't feel heavy. It was strange at first, being surrounded by kindness that didn't demand repayment. Work came soon after, a position with a small firm focused on environmental design. The first time I walked into the office, plans and models covering the walls, I knew I had found where I belonged. My days were filled with ideas, not apologies. I spent hours sketching landscapes and building models, using my creativity for something that mattered. Each project reminded me how far I had come from the version of myself that once lived in fear of disappointing others. There were still quiet moments when old memories crept in, the sound of my mother's voice, the weight of that constant guilt. Sometimes it stung, a dull ache in the background of my happiness. But pain has a way of softening over time, turning into something manageable. I didn't hate them anymore. I didn't love them the same way either. What I felt was acceptance. The wound was still there, but it had become a scar, a thin line reminding me of what I'd survived. One evening, while working late, I caught my reflection in the office window. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Steady posture, clear eyes, a small, knowing smile. She looked free. I realized then that freedom hadn't come from running away. It came from choosing myself every single day after. Love, I learned, is nothing without respect. And respect begins with learning to give it to yourself first. That truth stayed with me, gentle but firm, guiding me forward into a life I finally called my own. The night of the celebration glowed warm and golden, laughter filling the small restaurant that Mara had chosen for. The tables were covered in simple white cloths, candles flickering in jars, the scent of food and flowers mixing in the air. I looked around at the faces surrounding me, friends from school, a few co-workers, Mara sitting proudly at the head of the table, and realized this was what real belonging felt like. No one here expected anything from me, but my presence. Music played softly in the background, and the sound of clinking glasses made everything feel alive. When the waiter brought out a small cake with my name written across it, I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't expected anyone to make such a big deal out of my graduation. I'd worked hard, yes, but I'd done it quietly, used to going unnoticed. Seeing people celebrate me was something entirely new. Mara stood up, holding her glass, her smile wide enough to reach her eyes. "I have something to say," she announced. The room hushed, and everyone turned toward her. "To Lana," she began, her voice full of warmth, for realizing she was never a purse, but the whole damn treasure. The group erupted in cheers, laughter echoing through the space. I covered my face for a moment, trying to hide the tears that had started to fall. Her words hit deeper than I expected. I had spent so long thinking of myself as someone to be used, to be drained, to be needed. Hearing it framed like that, me as something valuable, something whole, made the room blur through my tears. When I looked up, Mara raised her glass higher, and I joined her. "To new beginnings," I said softly, my voice shaking but steady enough to carry. As the night went on, stories and jokes filled the air. I found myself laughing, really laughing, the kind that came from a place untouched by pain. Every sound, every face around me reminded me of the life I had built, the one I'd chosen, brick by brick, after everything fell apart. Later, as the crowd thinned and only a few of us remained, I stepped outside for some air. The city lights shimmered across the street, and a cool breeze brushed my hair. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stood outside a kitchen window and heard her world break. She was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had learned that self-worth wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. I whispered into the quiet night, more to myself than anyone else. If someone treats your kindness like a wallet, remember, you can always close it. The words felt final, like closing the last page of a long, heavy book. Then I smiled, wiped my eyes, and walked back inside to the sound of laughter that, at last, truly belonged to me. Hey besties, thanks for staying with me till the end of this journey. Imagine giving everything for family, only to discover you were nothing but their purse. Painful, right? But sometimes walking away is the first step toward real peace. Lana found her worth, her freedom, and her voice. If this story moved you, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one. Bye!